Hello, welcome back to Reads of an Apple. My name is Stacy, and I am here to wrap up October, November, and December of 2022. Things got away from me, and I figured I'd just try to do it quick fire. I think that's right. Style. So, I won't be talking in depth about too much of these books, but check out my weekly vlogs if they are a part of a readathon. Or eventually I will be doing full reviews for all of these books on my blog, but I won't be starting those back up until February, so stay tuned for those. But yeah, let's just get into it because we have a lot to go through. So, stats for October. I read 19 books for 3,751 pages. I averaged 0.6 days per book. The average page count was 197.42. For page breakdown, I read 5 books under 100 pages, 6 books in the 100s, 2 books in the 200s, 4 books in the 300s, 1 book in the 600s, and 1 DNF, my only DNF of 2022. Okay, so for clubs, readathons, and read-alongs, I read 7 books specifically for those. 10 of the books I read had diversity. I read 12 new authors, 0 rereads. I own 2 of these books in paperback. I added 5 books to my wish list, and I read 2 books in paperback, and the rest, so the other 17, I read in ebook format. Okay, for traditional publication, so publication type, I read 4 that were traditionally published, and 15 were indies. For decades, I read 3 books published in the 2000s, 3 in the 2010s, and 13 in the 2020s. I did read a lot of monster Halloweenish novellas to finish up Bangin' the Night, so that's probably why. My average rating was 3.94 stars, so it was a lower rating month for me. So we have 5 for 5 stars. I read 4 5 stars, 2 4.5 stars, 6 4 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 2 2.5 stars, and 1 DNF. And then our last little stats block is genres. So I read 3 contemporaries, 6 fantasies, 1 historical, 8 paranormal, and 1 sci-fi. As for the 3 contemporaries, 1 was dark, 1 was small town, and 1 was holiday. And that's it for stats. So let's talk about the books that I read. So the first book I read in October was Love, Laugh, Lick by Kate Pryor. This is the first book in her Claws and Cubicles series, and this series is, there's been an apocalypse, and evil company, evil CO, is basically running everything, and they're running it like a huge corporation. And so this is the Lick CEO and his assistant's romance. There were some things I had issues with this. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was definitely intriguing for a fantasy monster office romance, but I was intrigued enough to read the second book, so I immediately picked up book 2, which is The Orc from the Office, and this is Janice and Kent. I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this one. This one, Janice is an HR person, and she is struggling to open a filing cabinet, and Kent, Orc, who works in IT, is walking by, stops in to help her out. She somehow accidentally elbows him in the nose, draws blood, and triggers the mating instinct for them. And they have to deal with it. So we get HR, we get MR, which is human resources and monster resources. It was just so cheeky and fun. You don't have to read the first book, but Janice is a friend of the person in the first book, so you can read it if you want. But this book, I highly recommend it. It is the best monster office romance I've ever read. And then I picked up My Lonely Shifter Match. This is by Sky Alder. And this is the first book in her Love Bites dating agency. And technically this is a spin-off of a different series. I did not know that, but it was fine on its own. And this is Honey and Cliff. Cliff and his 3 friends have cabins up in the mountains, and they are getting lonely. They are all veterans, and he signs up for a shifter dating agency, and they find his mate, who is Honey. She's down on her luck woman, and she gets approached to try this dating thing. Insta romance, fated mate type situation. I give this 3 stars. It was fine. The heroine made some silly choices. Then I picked up The Fool and the Sparrow by Dana Fox. This is the first book in her Arcana of the Tarot series. Oh, I was really excited for this one. Really, really excited. I love tarot. I am a tarot person. And a fantasy romance set around the major arcana of tarot as characters, I was like, oh, this is so fun. It let me down as a fantasy romance. It let me down as a romance. I gave this 2.5 stars. It felt like to me that the author was putting descriptions and fantasy style things in this book because that's what that's what fantasy people do without understanding the whys of why certain things in world building, why they are set up the way they are and why things are introduced the way they are. And she just didn't, it felt like to me she didn't understand the nuances of fantasy romance or just fantasy in general. So 2.5 stars. And we spent way too long of this book in the real world and not in the fantasy romance area. Then, October 9th through the 15th was the Love in the Night readathon. Check out, I did do a reading vlog for it, so check that out up there. So, these ones are all in-depth there, but I read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. This is the first book in her Mead Mishap series. I've heard really good things about this. I give this 3.5 stars. The premise of this was super intriguing. I got a little ranty on some things because some character choices and plot choices were made that didn't make sense to me. And there are times where it's set in like a medieval historical type thing, like setting, but the characters talk so modern that a lot of the times it took me out of the story and just started really bothering me and frustrating me. Because it just didn't match. Like, it was just a mishmash and it wasn't blended as well as I felt like it could. And then there were really weird things thrown in, like nachos. She gets nachos at this medieval, like, food cart thing. Nachos. Like, of all the things that you wanted to bring in, it had to be nachos. And it was like this big whole description of how he makes these nachos in this medieval style cookery. Things like that. Just really bothered me, as you can tell. So 3.5 stars. Then I read the group book for the readathon, and that was The Captive Merman's Promise. This is by Zoe Castile. This is the 5th book in the Peculiar Tastes multi-author series. This is I didn't know it at the time, but a gender-swapped Little Mermaid retelling ish. Um, and this is a witch and a merman, and her family is basically cursed that whenever they fall in love with someone, they die. And she took the entire curse into herself for her family. So her surviving and future generations of her family, it only happens to the women, obviously, and so that they wouldn't have to suffer this curse. And now she's trying to find a way to remove the curse, kind of a thing. And she runs into a merman who ends up kind of helping her. Then book number 7 was No Rest for the Wicked by Kresley Cole. This is the second book in Immortals After Dark. This is the only one I read of 2022, at least October forward, but I do plan on reading more of these in 2023 because I would like to get as close to caught up as I can. And this is Katerin and Sebastian, 5 stars, 5 freaking stars. I love them. This is a vampire and Valkyrie romance. It feels nostalgic to me because when these books were first published and really became popular, I was into paranormal. I just was reading other series, not this one. So it's new, but nostalgic. And I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I was able to find one of the original covers in pretty decent condition. So 5 stars. I am joining the I-80 hype train for sure. Okay. Then the final book I read for the readathon was Darkest Night by Alessa Thorne. Alessa Thorne is one of my favorite indie authors. She does fantasy and paranormal romances most of the time, and this is the first book in her Magic and Mercenary series, which is light paranormal, dark romance between 2 hitmen, antiquity, recollection people. I mean, this is National Treasure, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, dark romance mishmash. I loved it. 5 stars. I love Alessa Thorne. I'm super excited. I need to read the second book in the series, and the third book just came out in January of 2023, and the fourth book is coming up soon, which should wrap up the series. But knowing Alessa Thorne, she loves to do spin-off series for side characters. So I love Alessa Thorne. It's on KU. Check her out. Check this out. I loved it. This is Athena and Khan is a hit person / recollection dude and of antiquities, but he is working for someone that he's trying to get revenge against, and she is also recollecting these antiquities and magical items, but she's doing it to return them to who should be owning it. She steals something and returns it to the cave, or returns it to the monks who guard the sacred cave that this item was stolen from, kind of a thing. So she's doing it for good. So that was for the readathon. Then let me change my little notes here. I kind of went on a little binge to try to finish up the Bang in the Night readathons. A lot of these books were geared towards specific prompts to finish that. So I picked up Riding the Headless Horseman. This is by Molly Likovich. I gave this 2 stars. I went in this not expecting much, and it didn't quite give me what I was expecting, which wasn't much, but yeah, it was fine. I mean, if you're looking for a quick, slightly smutty monster romance with the Headless Horseman, then there you go. It's in KU. Then I read the Rake Appreciation Society book for the month, and that was The Lotus Palace by Jeannie Lin. This is the first book in her Li Ping Kong mysteries. I love Jeannie Lin. I hadn't read this series before. 4.5 stars. It was so well done. And in college, I used to watch a lot of Asian dramas, and some of my favorites were the Chinese fantasy historical dramas, and this felt like that without the fantasy elements, so it felt kind of nostalgic to me, and I love this. I definitely want to read more in the series. I'm a big fan of Jeannie Lin. I love that we get Chinese historical romance, because we need more Asian set historical romances, for sure. But 4.5 stars. I loved this. Then I picked up Safe With You by Jenning Bunting. This is listed as a Gold Heart novella, but Gold Heart is the small town where her Finch Family series is set. So I'm counting this as like Finch Family 2.5 because it does overlap a little bit with book 2. But then it also takes place after book 2 ends. I gave this 4 stars. This was super fun. I'm very picky about what I need in my novella, so it didn't quite hit all of the notes that I wanted for a novella, but I thought it was a really great addition to just that little universe and world that she's creating in Gold Heart. Plus, it was super fun to finally know exactly what happened when Thumper and Izzy are at the bank and it gets held up by a woman in a chicken costume. Okay, then I picked up I Kissed a Ghoul by Kat Baxter. This is a part of the multi-author Halloween Steam series. This is Ainsley and Reed. This is a mutual pining brother's best friend. He is a football player, and she, I think it kind of seems like she is not like a socialite, but she's in that type of realm of things. Her family's very wealthy. I give this 4 stars. It was serviceable for, and it was set around Halloween time. So we've got Halloween, sports, contemporary romance, and they go to a Halloween party kind of situation, mutual pining, all that good stuff. Then my one DNF of the year. I tried reading Bitten by Kelly Armstrong. I DNF'd it at 54%. I pushed myself so hard to get past 50% so I could count it for my reading challenges. Check out my week 43 vlog to see why I struggled with this book. This is the second time I tried reading it. I watched the first season of the TV show, wasn't a big fan of the season of the TV show, didn't watch more past the first season. My sister swears up and down that this series gets better. I actually own the first few books in this series because they were extras that she had that she gave to me, and I sold them before this was voted in to the Smart Women Read Romance exclusive Patreon review. And I sold them at to my local used bookstore because I wasn't going to try them again because I read that one and I just couldn't get into it, and I didn't like the TV show, so I was like, it's just not for me. My sister swears they get better. But I might try one of her other series, but I can't continue with this series. I disliked the hero character, and I really thought Elena, our lead heroine, made some very silly, stupid decisions. So, book number 14 was Evil Twin by Katie Wilde. This is a fantasy historical set romance. And this is the first book in this is a part of the multi-author Villains in Love series. This is Echo and Bane. I also talk about this book in my week 43 vlog. I give this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. There were some silly situations that just were a little too silly for me, but overall I enjoyed it. This was the first book I've read by Katie Wilde, so I'm definitely intrigued to read more from her. Then for the SJM along, our October book was Tower of Dawn, and this book has done it. I now like and understand Kale. I am on Team Kale now. He's still not my favorite hero in the series, but I do not dislike him with a passion anymore. Plus, Urine. Urine is the greatest. Just saying. And it was fun to be on a different continent, although it was kind of hard because I couldn't imagine what it was like when you were reading these as they were being published and having to wait so long to figure out what happened to freaking Aelin and to save Aelin. But it was even more like, thankfully, I just had to wait a couple months because of the read along. But I enjoyed this. 5 stars. I am enjoying my time with Sarah J. Maas. I am fully on the hype train for Sarah J. Maas, and I'm on Team Kale now. But mostly because of Urine. Let's be honest. Mostly because of her. Then I picked up The Wallflower by Dana Marie Bell. This is the first book in her Haley Puma series. This is Emma and Max. This is a human and a cougar shifter, and he is coming back to town, and he sees a girl that he used to go to high school with. They were different grades, and recognized her as his mate. Kind of ish turns her into a cougar without her realizing it. But, I mean, 4 stars. Yeah, there was maybe some consent things there, but he was a fated mate. They were getting frisky, and he couldn't stop his cougar from biting her and claiming his mate. So I gave it a pass. But I enjoyed this. 4 stars. Then I picked up Dark Planet Falling by Anna Carvin. This is the second book in her Dark Planet Warriors series. It's been a while since I read the first book, but this is Prince Zal, X-A-L for short, and Sarah is like a reporter in America, or like what America is on Earth, and she is helping him kind of separate from his mother and evil queen of his planet and him and his sect of people are rebelling from the other sect, and they want to kind of make their way and make a new home on Earth, especially since they have found out in the first book that these aliens and humans are compatible. And so she kind of helps, she goes with him to learn why they're here, that kind of thing. And then she helps him and his group of people kind of integrate into Earth society. So I like this. Like I said, 4 stars. Then I picked up Desires Darkly, The Camper by Jack Harbin. I almost instantly regretted this and was like, what am I doing to myself? Because this starts out full slasher movie. I'm not a horror movie fan, but this is with a monster-ish dude. So this is Nathan. He's returning to a camp where bad things happened and it was shut down. And while he's there, he runs into some college kids who are there to like test this creepiness or whatever and see if they can survive the night at this derelict camp. And there ends up being a slasher guy there. And he kills everybody else but takes Nathan for his own. So it is between Nathan and this slasher dude. And when it got to the slasher part, I had to stop and I was like, I'm regretting picking up this book because if I get nightmares from this book, I'm not gonna be okay. I get nightmares from just watching horror movie teaser trailers on TV. I can't handle horror movies. I can't do it. And then to wrap up the month, the last book I read in October was new release Resting Witch Face by Juliet Cross. This is Ruben and Jules. 5 stars. I mean, if you've seen any of my other things, any of my other I talk about books at all, you know Juliet Cross is one of my favorite authors. She's one of the nicest people I know. This series, every book is just so good. Second chance romance. And I struggle with second chance romance, but I feel like Juliet did it right. I know she also struggles with second chance romance because I've talked about it on our Patreon and they've talked about it on their podcast. This one I can handle. Plus, look at the cute little vampire teeth on it. I love these covers. And she's announced that there are special edition hardcovers coming. She's going to just take all of my money. But yeah, Ruben Jules. We got Masquerade Balls. I just love these. They make me happy. And they're gorgeous. And the final book in the series is coming out in May, and I probably will do a reread of the whole series leading up to that release because I'm not ready for it to be over. But yeah, 5 stars. 5 amazing stars. And that is it for October. What are we at? We're at 25 minutes. Okay. I wish I was doing a little bit better, but that's fine. Let us just keep kind of rolling through things. So let us do November real quick. So stats for November. I read 15 books for 3,080 pages. So this was one of my lower reading months for the year. I averaged 0.47 days per book. The average page count was 205.33 pages. The page breakdown was 6 books under 100, 2 books in the 100s, 2 books in the 200s, 3 books in the 300s, and 2 books in the 400s. 5 of the books I picked up for clubs, readathons, and read-alongs. Only 2 of the books had a diversity. I read 5 new authors. I had 2 rereads. And I owned 4 of these books in paperback, and I added 2 to my wish list. I read 2 of the books in paperback and 13 via ebook. 3 of these books are traditionally published, and 12 are indie published. And then the decades I read in, I had 1 1990s book, 4 2010 books, and 10 books published in the 2020s. This was the year of 2020 published books for me. And then my average rating was once again kind of low, 3.9 stars. I read 2 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, and 1 2 star. And then last are genres. I had 4 contemporaries, 1 fantasy, 3 historical, 2 sci-fi, and 5 fan fictions. And then for the contemporary spread, I read 3 small town romances and 1 holiday romance. So let us quickly chat about the books that I read. November. Okay, so to start the month of November 1st through November 7th was the fan fiction readathon. I did do a reading vlog, so check that out. But I will quickly touch base on these. I read Songbird by Wormfood. This is a one-piece fan fiction between Ace and the Reader. The second book I read was Sensitive, which is by Sweet Like Salt. This was a Naruto fanfiction of Sakura and Sasuke. The third fanfiction I read, and my favorite, was The Footprints Left by Willow9124. This was a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fanfic set after the end of Angel, and I feel like partly through the comic book series, the official comic book series, and this was between Buffy and Spike, and I absolutely loved this. This is actually one of my favorite paranormal romances of the year. Just throwing that out there. Then I picked up Power Over Me by Hufflepuff-ish. This is a Harry Potter fanfic between Helga Hufflepuff and Salazar Slytherin. The fifth fanfiction I read was Long Live the King by Selene Erastus, and this was an Adventure Time fanfiction between Simon, aka the Ice King, and Betty, and it is them getting their HEA, which I loved. I didn't give ratings. So for the One Piece one, 3 stars, the Naruto one, 3.5 stars, the Buffy one, 4.5 stars, the Harry Potter one, 4 stars, and the Adventure Time, 3.5 stars. And then I did start Manacled by Sunlin Yu. This is Harry Potter, Hermione, Hermione and Draco. Set kind of ish around Handmaid's Tale. I'm still where I last left it at 24%. I have not picked it back up since then. At some point, I will finish it. It's just really long. And I've been reading other things. And so after that, I read Brides of the Kylor, book number 1 by Zoe Draven. This is her new series. I gave this 5 stars. I love Zoe Draven. I love sci-fi romance. I love alien romance. And I love freaking gargoyle winged vampire alien people. This was amazing. Amazing. And then to keep going with my sci-fi mood, I reread Ice Planet Barbarians again, the first book, and this is Georgie and Vectel. I gave it 4.5 stars. I actually had rated it 4 stars before, but I upped it to 4.5 stars because it's just, I mean, there's a reason they blew up. If you have not read it and you're interested in alien romance, I highly recommend it. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've reread this first book. There's just something just so kind of cozy about it, which is odd to say, but I mean, there's a reason why they blew up and why they surprise people with how addicting and good they are. Because let me tell you, when I first found this series a couple years ago, I definitely went through a binge of like all of the novellas up to like book 16 or something. So they are very addicting. Then the 8th book I read was Finding You by Lena Hendricks. This is the first book in her Chickaloo Falls series. I give this 4.5 stars. Small town romance between a veteran and a woman. Her name is Joanna. She is one of the only female like wilderness guides to take people out hiking and camping and show them like where the good fishing spots and stuff are. And I love this. This was my first Lena Hendricks. I've been really wanting to read Lena Hendricks. She's one of the couple authors that are really good friends with Elsie Silver, and I see them kind of promoting their stuff all the time. And I love Elsie Silver. So I wanted to try one of her buddies' books, and I was a big fan, and I definitely want to read more from Lena Hendricks. And then for one of the Bookcase and Coffee group reads for their final Clear the TBR challenge that went over the last couple months of the year. I picked up The Baby Proposition by Kim Lorraine. This is the first book in her Anything for Love series, which is Claire and Maverick. I give this 4 stars. This is friends to lovers specifically to get her pregnant because she wants a baby to like relationship lovers. There were some decisions made by the heroine that I didn't like. There were also, this is set like very modern, and I didn't like how, like I get it, the small town stereotype, everybody's in everybody's business, everybody has their judgments, but I also was like, it's 2022, or it's like 2021 whenever this book was set. Like they're not gonna have the same ideals as like back in the 40s and 50s. Like people have moved on even in these smaller towns. They are a little, like, even if they're side-eyeing you, they're not like publicly like ostracizing this woman for being a single mom kind of a thing. And she is a vet, which is also fun. Then the 10th book that I picked up was the S.J. Emelong book of the month, and that was A Court of Frost and Starlight 3.5 in the ACOTAR series. I love this. It was super fun to read like a holiday novella. I mean, a novella for Sarah J. Maas. And we get we got Morgan's POV, we got Cass's POV, we got Nesta's POV, plus we got Reese and Feyre, and I'm so intrigued to see what's happening, and I feel like a lot of things got set up for Nesta's book, which is coming up soon in the read-along. 5 stars. I loved it. I mean, are we surprised? Plus, I'm so happy that I have one of the original covers because it is so pretty. My stack is kind of precariously perched over here. Alright, so then I picked up the Rake Appreciation book for the month, and that was Sea of Ruin. And then I also read the prequel book when it kind of says in the beginning of the prequel novella, this takes place at this page, and then so I read that up to that page in Sea of Ruin, then picked up the novella, and then went back to Sea of Ruin. And so I gave The King of Libertines, which is the prequel novella-ish, 4 stars. This is basically setting up Bennett and Priest's relationship. And I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. And it was nice to kind of see how their relationship was formed. Especially because we don't get much of their actual relationship in Sea of Ruin, which I read next. I gave this book 3 stars. I really struggled with this, and I thought it was ending, and then I looked at my Kindle and it was like at 70%, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We need to be wrapping this up. The dark elements, for the most part, I was fine with until we got to one of the later scenes where she's getting completely obliterated by this random dude, and not in a sexual way. Like, she is on death's door. He's beating her with a frickin' plank of wood while she's tied to the mast, and it just felt entirely unnecessary for where that plot thread was taking us. Like, she had gone through so much darkness before then. It just felt unnecessary to me to have that scene play out the way that it did. Plus, I'm not a big fan of MMF, of threesome, of thruples, whatever you want to call it. So it takes a lot to really have me on board for the threesome couple. I didn't quite feel it here. It just didn't quite do it for me. So 3 stars. Then to kind of make me feel better, I went back to my reread. I went back to my reread of Lucky Harbor. So I picked up book 2, which is The Sweetest Thing. I gave this 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it more this time coming back and rereading it. This is second chance romance. I love Lucky Harbor. This was the first series I read from Jill Shalvis, and it's been so nice to go back to this series and just like this. Like, I used to read a lot of contemporary, and most of it was Jill Shalvis, and then I kind of got away from that, and I was full like fantasy paranormal girly. And now that I'm like found myself back in the contemporary realm because of so many great indie contemporary authors, rereading Jill Shalvis, I'm like remembering why I like fell in love with contemporary romance and small town romance back in high school. And I love this series to pieces, and I'm hoping to finish my reread of the series in 2023. But this is Second Chance, Tara, and Ford. The first 3 books are around 3 sisters, and she had actually had a fling with Ford when she was a teenager coming to stay with her mom, and she ended up getting pregnant, and because they were both so young, they ended up giving the daughter away for adoption. And so when she's back in town to deal with this B&B Inn situation that her mother left them when she died in the first book, she keeps running into Ford, and then her daughter shows up and wants to get to know them. And these books are cozy to me. Then I read the Smart Women Read Romance Patreon book of the month, which was Charming the Prince by Teresa Medeiros. This is the first book in her Once Upon a Time series. I give this 4 stars. I love Teresa Medeiros. I have enjoyed all of the books I've read from her so far. And yes, I have the pretty shiny cover with the gorgeous step back, and I'm just a big fan of this. This is Willow and Lord Banner. He is looking for a dowdy wife so that he doesn't have any more children because he's got like 8 of them, and he needs a wife to help he needs another wife. I think she's his 3rd wife, I think, to help raise the children. So he sends his men out to find a dowdy woman to take as wife, and they find her and kind of rescue her from a horrible situation. And yeah, 4 stars. It was a lot of fun. I did want a little bit more from the romance. There was a lot of familial relationship focus on that because there are so many kids, but overall I really enjoyed this. So 4 stars. And then the final book I read in November was, let me zoom in here, Taken on Thanksgiving by Annabelle Winters. This is the first book in her Taken on Thanksgiving series, or no, Curvy for the Holidays series. And I gave this 2 stars. I don't know what this book wanted to be. This book wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And yeah. This was a neighbor gets invited to her elderly neighbor's Thanksgiving because her nephew is getting out of prison, and they are Australian, and it turns out his aunt, his elderly aunt, is actually going to kill him and kill her or hurt her so that it can pin him on him, so he gets sent back to prison so she can basically steal the family's inheritance from him, and then she and him end up killing these people or doing something horrible, and then she breaks him out of prison and they escape to Australia. I was like, what is this Thanksgiving novella turning into? It was not what I expected. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was like, what is happening here? This isn't what I thought it was gonna be. So 2 stars, because what it did, because it could have been bonkers in a fun way, and it wasn't bonkers in a fun way. It was bonkers in a, I don't know what the hell is happening and why these characters are making these choices kind of way. So yeah, that was how I ended November. Yeah, so let us hit December. Now, a lot of these are going, a lot of the books in December I picked up for Vlogmas, so definitely check out, I have all of my Vlogmas videos in a playlist, so definitely check them out if you want to hear more about these books. I'm just going to touch base on them very briefly because this is getting long. But we'll start with stats here. So I ended up reading 32 books for 5,391 pages. I averaged 0.63 days per book. The average page count was 168.47. And I read 15 books under 100 pages, 9 books in the hundreds, 4 books in the 200s, 1 book in the 300s, 2 books in the 400s, and 1 book in the 900s. But let's be honest, it's like 998 or something crazy, so it's almost 1,000. 2 of these books were for clubs, readathons, and or read-alongs. 5 books had diversity. I read 13 new authors. 1 of these books was a reread. I own 2 of these in paperback. I added 8 of these books to my wish list, and I read 1 book in paperback, 17 books in ebook, and 14 audiobooks. Welcome to the land of audiobooks for me. I've read a couple here and there, but I'm like fully on the audiobook train now. Now, 5 of these books were traditionally published, 5 of these were by small publishers, and 22 were indie published. I read 2 books from the 1990s, 1 book from the 2000s, 15 books from the 2010s, and 19 books from the 2020s. And then my average rating, surprisingly, was 3.95 stars. I'm surprised it wasn't higher because I've read a lot of really good books. But I read 7 5 stars, 6 4.5 stars, 6 4 stars, 4 3.5 stars, 8 4 stars, and 1 2 star. As for genres, I read 18 contemporaries, 2 fantasies, 3 historicals, 6 paranormal, and 3 sci-fi romance. So, like, one of my best spread out months. I mean, outside of a billion contemporaries, but I have, like, a good mix of all of my subgenres. And as for my contemporary spread, I read 16 holiday romances, 1 sports romance, and 1 just straight contemporary. So, let us talk about the books I read. Alright, so for Vlogmas Day 1, I read Naughty and Nice by Kaylin Evans. This is book 3 in her Holiday Valley series. I gave this 4.5 stars. Book number 2, I also read for Vlogmas, was Snowed In with the Player by Rebecca Genshak. This is her first book in her Holiday with the Players duet. I gave this 5 stars. The 3rd book I read for Vlogmas was Festive Fever by Hallie Bennett. This is the first book in her Christmas in Curves series, and I gave this 3.5 stars. The 4th book I read was Android Blue Christmas by Tracy Lauren. This is the 2nd book in her Android series, and I gave this 4.5 stars. Also read this for Vlogmas. Vlogmas Day 5 was The Christmas Dragon's Mate by Zoe Chant. This is the first book in her Christmas Valley Shifters series. So we've got a dragon shifter Christmas novella. Book 6 is Mistletoe Mobster by Cassie Mint. This is the first book in her Very Merry Mob series. 4 stars. I enjoyed this one. Also for Vlogmas. Book 7 for Vlogmas was Silent Night by Cassie Mint. This is the second book in the Very Merry Mob series. I also gave this one 4 stars, but I think I like the first one a little bit better. The 8th book I read for Vlogmas was Second Bite by S.J. Tilley. This is the first book in her Bite series. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved it. Then I read a random novella, Swapped Bride by Cassie Mint. This is the first book in her Twin Swap series. And I gave this one 3 stars. This one is Hidden Twin That Everybody Thinks Is Dead, because I did not read this one for Vlogmas, so I will do a brief touch base. Hidden twin who was injured has a scar on her face, and so her father has hidden her away from the world, and her sister gets kind of forced into an arranged marriage for some of her father's black market dealings, and they decide to switch places because that means that Nora, the twin that's been kind of hidden away, can escape the situation that she's in, and her sister isn't forced to marry some dude she doesn't want to marry. The 10th book I read for Vlogmas, this was for Vlogmas, was A Holiday Lift by Corinne Michaels. I gave this 2.5 stars. I was disappointed with this book. Then the 11th book I read for the month, also for Vlogmas, was Sneaking Around with the Player. This is the second book in the duet. I gave this one 5 stars. And I also read a little bonus epilogue that you could get when you sign up for Rebecca Jenshak's newsletter. And this was super fun. I enjoyed this one. I think I liked the first book a little bit more just because I connected with the heroine more. But this duet was phenomenal. And then I continued my Rebecca Jenshak binge and I picked up Tutoring the Player. This is the first book in her Campus Wallflower series. I gave this book 4.5 stars. We've got new adult, hockey player, bad boy hockey player, shy, good girl, and I loved it. I mean, it was super trope filled, super kind of almost stereotypical in some of the tropes and the way that things went down, but I loved it. Then the next book I read for Vlogmas was The Best Husband Money Can Buy by Mary Jo Putney. 5 stars. I am on the Mary Jo Putney train. If you've read Mary Jo Putney and know where I can start in reading her full-length novels, please let me know because I need a guide to Mary Jo Putney so I can start binging her series. I love this novella. Then I reread The Hunted Holiday for Vlogmas. This is by Mandy M. Roth, and this is the Bureau of Paranormal Investigations, Book 1, and I dropped my rating from 4 stars down to 3 stars upon reread. Also for Vlogmas, I read Heated Holiday, which is Book 2 in Mandy M. Roth's Bureau of Paranormal Investigation series. I also gave this one 3 stars. Then I finally read, which I've been wanting to read forever, The 9 Lives of Christmas by Sheila Roberts. I read this for Vlogmas, and the movie is better. I gave this 3 stars. This wasn't really quite a romance to me. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed, so check out my Vlogmas for more of that. Then I picked up If You Give a Jerk a Gingerbread, which is the second book in Reindeer Falls. 4 stars. I read this for Vlogmas. I also read book 3 in the series for Vlogmas, The One Night Stand Before Christmas. I gave this one 3.5 stars. And then I picked up another Mary Jo Putney and I read The Christmas Cuckoo for Vlogmas, 4.5 stars. Then I read the S.J. Amalong book for the month and we finished Throne of Glass. So Kingdom of Ash, 5 stars. I smiled, I laughed, I cried, I cheered, I cried again. I cried happy tears, I cried sad tears. I was devastated. I was confused and slightly angry at one of the people that was killed off. And I enjoyed every minute of it. 5 amazing stars. Then I picked up Snow Angel by Mink. I read this for Vlogmas. 4 stars. The 22nd book I read of the month, also for Vlogmas, was 6 Sensual Wishes by Nicole Falls. This is a part of the multi-author Bays of Christmas series, and I gave this one 3 stars. I picked up 'Tis the Season to Be Kissed by Amy Andrews for Vlogmas as well. Gave this one 4 stars. And then I picked up the Knew You Were Mine audiobook by Angela Maria Hart. I also read this for Vlogmas. This is young adult, which I did not realize, and I gave this one 3 stars. Then I picked up the fantasy romance and Nutcracker retelling book, The Nutcracker of Crystal Fall. I read this for Vlogmas. I gave this 4 stars. This is the prequel novella to K.L. Moody's Fate and Crystal Thorns series. It was great. I loved it. We're almost through. For the 26th book I read for the month was Buck Me for Christmas by Anya Nolan. This is the first book in her Frost Brother Brides series. However, this is also in her more expansive, like, think MCU, but her, like, big encompassing series. It is a part of the Shifter Groves Bride series, and in that series it's considered a book 6.5. I give this one 3.5 stars. I mean, reindeer shifter romance with Blitz, aka Blitzen. Then the final book I read for Vlogmas, Kissing Santa Claus, which is in the Small Town Christmas Anthology. This is Lucky Harbor 2.5. There are 3 books in Lucky Harbor I did not read, and they are 3 different Christmas novellas, so I was very excited to pick this up because it fit perfect in where I was in my Lucky Harbor reread. 5 stars. It was only 30 pages, but I gave it 5 stars because I enjoyed the heck out of it. I just love Jill Chavez and I love Lucky Harbor. So there we go. And then I kind of went rogue for the last few books of the month because I didn't have holiday romances to read anymore. So I picked up the audiobook for Courted by Her Cougar by Felicity Heaton. This is the 3rd book in her Cougar Creek Mates series, and I gave this one 3 stars. This one is a demigoddess arrives to where the cougars are all kind of doing their yearly get-together for to like help women who, or female cougars who are reaching their majority and are ready to start breeding and having a mate, find who their mate's gonna be. Then I picked up the 4th and final book in this series, Craved by Her Cougar, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was so great. It gave me everything I needed and was a great way to finish off the series. I loved the last book in the series. Then I picked up what was originally going to be the Rake Appreciation Society book because I already had it checked out via my Hoopla, and I was out of checkouts. So I was like, I'm just going to read it even though the Rake Appreciation was canceled for the month because of all the holiday festivities. But I read it anyway, and that was The Bride's Necklace by Kat Martin. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed myself. It was a little long, but this is an older book, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself and definitely have already continued in this trilogy. And then I picked up The Alien Zookeeper's Abduction by Zara Zenia and Juno Wells. This is the first book in her their Alien Abduction series. And he is an alien zookeeper, and it is bonkers, and I was just having a great time listening to the audiobook while I was crocheting, and I was like, sweet, this is fun. I did not put what I rated it on my little cheat sheet, so I think I gave it 4 stars, but don't quote me on it. And then the final book I read of 2022 was one of my favorite books of 2022, and that was Madness of the Horde King. This is the 3rd book in Zoe Draven's Horde Kings of Dakar series. I had read this series back when it first started coming out, and I was completely caught up with book 2, and none of the other books were out, and then I just never went back to her after binging all of her other books, and never went back once the rest of the series was released. And after reading the first book in her new series, I was like, I never finished the Horde Kings, so I need to finish the Horde Kings, and this is the first step in that. 5 stars. I loved it. But yeah, there are all of the books that I read in the last quarter, the last 3 months, October, November, and December of 2022. And there you go. And we are just under an hour, so I'm going to wrap up. Yeah, let me know what your favorite of these are, if you've read any of them, or if you're interested in any of them. If you'd like to leave me an emoji, leave me something book related down below. But otherwise, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I will see you all soon with another video.